This was the moment the ocean stopped being neutral. A ship tried to vanish behind false ownership, fabricated paperwork, and painted symbols of power, believing intimidation would keep it safe. Moscow made the call. Washington stayed silent and seized a vessel anyway. There was no warning shot. This was a declaration. The rules of the global game have changed, and Russia's shield is gone.
The thing is that the United States Navy has just captured a tanker off the coast of Iceland. This tanker is part of the Shadow Fleet that services Russia, Venezuela, and Iran in order to evade sanctions. It was outside of Venezuela when it slipped by the cordon. Remember, the United States has a quarantine around Venezuela to prevent the tankers from coming or going. This one slipped through. They chased it across the Atlantic. Now they caught it. What makes this dramatic, what makes this important, very important, is that while it was sailing, the shell company that operates it changed its loyalty to Russia and painted a flag of Russia on the ship, called the Russians, and the Russians called the White House and said, "This is one of ours, do not take it." And now the United States has not just chased it halfway across the ocean, but taken it anyway. This is the first time ever in modern history that the United States has boarded and captured a nationally flagged tanker, not to mention directly in opposition to what Moscow had requested. What this means now is that it is game on for the entire Shadow Fleet, and any country that decides that they want to now has full legal cover to go and take any of the ships, because the United States has taken one that wasn't just mysterious in its origin, wasn't just using fraud, was actually claimed by a sovereign state, and that sovereign state is none other than Russia. This is going to lead to the collapse of the Shadow Fleet as a way to transport oil in real time over the next several weeks to months, most likely, unless something really crazy happens, and that will indirectly or directly affect in excess of about 4 to 5 million barrels a day of crude. It used to be a little bit higher, but Venezuela is already offline. So that is going to reshape any number of things in terms of security in Europe and the Ukraine war, the capacity of the Russians to fight in the war, what goes on with Iran, with the mullahs, and of course Venezuela and energy markets on a global basis. So we are at the beginning.
What Zeihan is describing is a red line crossing open water, deliberately, publicly, and without hesitation. A hidden oil lifeline that kept sanctioned regimes alive has been exposed, rendered vulnerable, and made legally huntable. In a single move, millions of barrels of supply were put at risk. A war machine was starved in real time, and energy markets across the globe felt the shock. From Eastern Europe to the Middle East, the balance of power shifted, and every major actor noticed. Peter Zeihan has long outlined how geography, economics, and logistics quietly determine the fate of empires long before the shooting starts. But what we're witnessing now is the moment theory collided with reality, not in a think tank, not in a forecast, on the open ocean, under the eyes of the entire world. This is where Russia's carefully constructed illusion of control didn't just crack, it shattered, and the shockwaves ran straight into the Kremlin. Russia has developed a familiar ritual. When it fails, it pretends nothing happened. Silence replaces accountability. Denial replaces strategy. But this time, that reflex collapsed because the failure unfolded live. 2 sanctioned Russian-linked vessels were seized in a coordinated, unmistakable operation. One in the Atlantic, another in the Caribbean. Different waters, same outcome. And no amount of propaganda could conceal it. The Kremlin didn't ignore the threat. It panicked. Warships were deployed. A submarine was sent to shadow one of the tankers, Bell 1, as if proximity alone could intimidate reality. The plan was simple. Escort the vessel long enough to reach friendlier waters, closer to Russia, where consequences could be avoided. The plan failed. Even seasoned observers doubted the outcome. The idea that U.S. or U.K. crews would actually board the ship seemed almost unthinkable. Russia had spent decades cultivating the belief that its flag was untouchable. That illusion died the moment foreign crews stepped onto the deck, seized the vessel, and arrested its crew, while Russian naval assets watched helplessly from a distance. The Kremlin said nothing, but Russian society did. Military bloggers, nationalist commentators, and pro-war voices erupted in panic. What terrified them wasn't just the loss of the ships, it was the exposure. The world saw that Russia's threats carried no weight. Its escorts were decorative, and its red lines were imaginary. Worse still, rumors spread about what might have been on board, items that could trigger political explosions far beyond the sea. Nothing was confirmed, but suspicion alone was enough to deepen anxiety in Moscow. Inside Ukraine, it's already clear something shifted. The posture between Washington, Moscow, and Kiev hardened almost overnight. This wasn't a maritime incident. It was a recalibration of power. Bell 1 was operating near Venezuela under a familiar disguise. Officially, it wasn't Russian. It was registered elsewhere. A shell game Moscow, Tehran, and Caracas have long used to move sanctioned oil under false identities. Everyone knew it was happening. Few acted. When the situation escalated, Russia dropped the disguise. The ship was re-registered. Renamed. A Russian flag was painted onto its hull. The message was unmistakable. Touch this and face consequences. The bluff failed. The flag didn't protect the ship. It didn't slow the operation. It didn't even provoke a response. Instead, it revealed something devastating. No one takes Russia seriously anymore. Not its symbols, not its threats, not its claim to superpower status. This seizure set a precedent that will echo far beyond a single incident. If a sanctioned vessel can be rebranded, escorted by warships, claimed by Moscow, and still be taken, then every similar ship worldwide just became vulnerable. From the Atlantic to the Baltic, the rules have changed. When danger increased, Russia doubled down militarily. Warships closed in. A submarine followed silently below. But when the boarding actually happened, when foreign crews stepped onto the deck, nothing followed. No confrontation. No escalation. Just observation from a safe distance. Shadowing a tanker, it turns out, is very different from attacking civilians. And once again, Russia revealed its limits. This fits a broader pattern. For years, Moscow sold the image of overwhelming strength, the world's second strongest military. That myth has been dismantled piece by piece. Ukrainian intelligence, precision strikes, unmanned systems, and border incursions have stripped away every illusion. Day after day, Russia grows weaker, poorer, and more exposed. The invasion of Ukraine was the original catastrophic miscalculation. Moscow underestimated resistance and wildly overestimated itself. After years of war, staggering losses, and minimal territorial gains, the truth is unavoidable. Russia cannot impose at will. And that realization has finally reached decision-makers in London and Washington. Bell 1 had been sanctioned years earlier. The legal authority to seize it already existed. What changed wasn't the law, it was resolve. The ship was empty. No oil, no visible cargo. But tankers don't sail empty without reason. And that only raised more questions. Speculation swirled about weapons, missiles, or strategic deliveries meant to strengthen authoritarian allies. Nothing was confirmed, but the possibility alone carried severe implications. If sensitive cargo had been discovered, trust would fracture, deals would collapse, and Russia's isolation would accelerate. What matters most is the outcome. A vessel flying Russia's flag, escorted by its navy, backed by its demands, was taken, and Moscow did nothing. Because Moscow knows the truth. If it cannot defeat Ukraine, it cannot confront NATO. It lacks the resources, the weapons, and the leverage. Its power now exists mostly in speeches and threats, and both were ignored. At the same time, another sanctioned vessel, Sophia, was seized in the Caribbean. This wasn't coincidence. It was coordination, and it exposed how long overdue enforcement truly was. This should have happened years ago, after Crimea, after the first wave of sanctions. But it's happening now, and the timing matters. Sanctioned Russian companies are collapsing. Losses are accelerating. Once profitable giants are bleeding out. Economic, military, and diplomatic pressure is converging into something deeper than temporary strain. This is structural decay. And for the first time in a long time, the Kremlin has no response. No narrative. No counterstrike. Just silence. That silence is louder than any speech, because it signals something fundamental has changed. The fear is gone. The bluff has been called. The machinery that once sustained Russia's global influence, hidden fleets, fake flags, intimidation, is breaking down in full view of the world. This isn't just about ships. It's about the restoration of international law, about enforcing consequences, about proving that aggression does not grant immunity. Peace doesn't come from appeasement. It comes from strength, unity, and action. And the Kremlin knows it.